Conibon. I've got Montani, who's joined us. Little by little, as people are joining, I'll greet people. Thank you, Eshaki, for joining us. Welcome to all of you. I do hope that our session will meet all your expectations. I'll briefly introduce the session and then I'm going to hand over to our speakers because we've got some very high-level speakers, 6 speakers who are with us, and I think we want to hand over to them as quickly as possible. So today's session is the last in our Solidarity in Museums cycle, which we have been organising. It's been going for almost a year now, in cooperation with our colleagues from CIMUZ, from ICOM Finland, ICOM Israel, and ICOM Greece. It's been put together as a response to the solidarity call for proposals that ICOM opened last December. I think Emma is going to mention this, and thank you to her for being here. This is the last session in this cycle, a cycle of 10 sessions. From December onwards, when we started to plan for this cycle of sessions, we anticipated things by calling it the challenges for ICOM in a time of crisis. So at each of our sessions that we've tried to run, focusing on a range of very important subjects that are relevant to our different members during the crisis, the pandemic, the longest running crisis that we've known since the wartime. We've come together on a Tuesday afternoon, 1 p.m. Paris time, and often had up to 100 participants. In September and October, a bit fewer because there's a lot on, but often up to 100 participants. At least 1/3 of the people who've joined our meetings have joined from other parts of the world other than the organisers' countries, and that's one of our aims. We wanted to be open to the whole ICOM community around the world. After this long series of debates that we've organised between us, we will, after today, have had more than 60 different speakers. We've tried to choose them from members of ICOM from different regions of the world and from different professions that are expressed within the ICOM organisation. Each time we invited all ICOM members who would have wanted to connect. I've talked a lot here about ICOM members because we can say probably quite honestly that not all regions of the world are equal in terms of internet connections. Internet is a wonderful tool that's enabled us to stay connected, but internet is not as accessible to all in the same way as it is to some of us. So after today's session, we have been committed to publishing proceedings of the different meetings. Today, we've invited our speakers to express their expectations with respect to ICOM. I think that over the last year, these expectations have probably evolved significantly after a year and a half of pandemic, and particularly after this summer, there's also a change in that we've become much more aware of how fragile our world is. So in order to talk about all of these issues, we've invited all of ICOM's key people who are responsible for the most important issues within our organisation. We think that ICOM is facing a pivotal moment in its history after Kyoto, after the spring of 2020, where there were a number of people who stepped back and we put in place a new governance model. We're now on track to prepare for the general conference that will take place in Prague in August 2022. And every day, ICOM seems to be asking us what our expectations are. In order to prepare for Prague, ICOM has been asking us to invest in the strategic plan, in defining museums, in revising our code of conduct, in questions of sustainable development, and obviously also issues related to the organizational governance, in particular the place of different international and national committees, that is to say, the different elected representatives of ICOM. So to kick this session off, I really want to thank all the speakers who are joining us. We've asked all of the people who are heading up the working groups. I mentioned the subjects just a moment ago, and I've asked the coordinators to be with us, not just to say what their working group is doing, but I guess to bear witness to the expectations of the members of ICOM from their point of view. The year that's ahead of us is likely to be very intensive. We hope that COVID will be behind us when we come together in Prague. So now is really the time to build the future ICOM. So I'm going to hand over to you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This session is interpreted it's in French, in English, and in Spanish. We've done this every time, the 3 official languages of ICOM. So feel free to express anything you want to in the chat box, ask questions, give your perspective, your testimonies, and your points of view. The session is going to be recorded and it will be accessible on YouTube if you want to listen again. And we therefore need to inform you that you are being recorded. So this means that you are agreeing to be filmed and you are agreeing that your words will be available on the YouTube channel. So that was my brief introduction, and I want once again to thank the different participants who've joined us over the last 5 minutes. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Emma Nardi. You all know the speakers, Emma Nardi for the SAREC Strategic Allocations Committee, Maureen Rees, who's been working on sustainability, Laurent Bonilla and Bruno Brulon will be speaking via video. They're working on the definition of museums. Sally Jurkovic, who is NEDCOM. We've got Gabriele Pique, who is head of the work on international committees. And we've also got Mutoni Tangwa, who is the representative of the national committees. So Emma, I'm going to hand over to you. You are a university professor. You founded the Rome Museum Education Centre. You are a former president of CICA and treasurer of ICOM. You're currently the chair of the SAREC Strategic Allocation Examination Committee, a very important committee, I would say, because this committee enables ICOM members to benefit from means and resources to work together and to carry out a research and communication project together. So, Emma, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. We are looking forward to hearing what it is that you do, but particularly perhaps focusing in the positions that you have worked in and that you're in now. How do you see members' expectations of ICOM evolving, and what do you think that ICOM should provide to its members in a time of crisis from now on, in any case? Thank you, Emma. I think you've got a brief PowerPoint to show us as you speak.
Emma, nous ne t'entendons pas. Emma, tu n'as pas mis ton micro, nous ne t'entendons pas.
Emma, we can't hear you, I'm afraid. You haven't got your mic unmuted.
I was saying that I really thank Juliette Raoul Delval for this organization. It's very important that we are all here. And I will read my presentation because I have just 5 minutes and there is not enough time to speak. So SAREC is, in my opinion, a very good observatory for understanding what our members wish. I think that membership wants innovation. If ICOM wants to survive, it has to change dramatically. We have to be brave enough to change. We cannot run things as they usually were. We have new technology, but we need new contents, new ways of building experience. For instance, the experience in Prague of a small group who had to check what was going on was not good from my point of view, because we had a model that repeated the past conferences, while we need a change. Kyoto has taught us that people want to discuss. And this need for innovation can be proved if I just show you a few figures from SAREC. Last year, ICOM gave to SAREC 540,000 euros. They were divided as the slide show you. Subvention to ICs and RAs, 200,000 euros. Regular project, which means small projects that get just 4,000 or 5,000 euros, we had 60,000 euros. And solidarity project, the new way of presenting project, had 280,000 euros. Now, SAREC couldn't spend all the 60,000 euros for regular project, while we spent not only all the money we had for solidarity project, but also the 18,000 euros left from regular project. So this means very clearly that the new proposal was very successful, and the old one got much less consent. So if you consider this figure, I think it's clear to see that innovation is what members wish. I would like to stress another point. All the support for the network was 540,000 euros, which is about what just ICOM France gives to ICOM as member fees. So it gives you the idea of how poor is this budget. It can seem a lot of money, but in reality, having to manage all the world, it's really peanuts. So another innovation that should be put in place is how to get more money from different means that the money coming from members' fees. And I would like to give you two ideas of mine. I think that ICOM has the capacity, the skills, the expertise to build a huge distance school for museum professionals. We have the international committees who have the expertise all over the world, and we have the national committees who could be the link between international committees and members at different local levels. This school could be something very important for ICOM, and I hope that somebody will support this idea, even if it seems that it is difficult and that it could be very challenging. The second idea, it's a dream, I think. I think about a contest addressed to unknown artists. Again, we have experts in contemporary art who could be the jury of such contest. ICOM could enlarge its cultural role and little by little gather a collection of pieces of art that could become a legacy to the future. Unfortunately, I think I have already finished my 5 minutes and I don't want to be late in order to leave other people to speak after me. Thank you so much for your attention.
Chère Emma, merci beaucoup. Alors, tu nous...
Thank you very much, Emma. You've stuck nicely to your time, but you've made us very excited to hear what the other speakers want to see. You've talked of dreams and proposals. It's very mouth-watering to hear. So when we debate things in a few moments, we might ask you to talk a bit more in detail about your suggestions, because some of these ideas are quite different to what we're used to hearing within ICOM. And so I agree with you that perhaps it might be time for us to dream a little bit. Perhaps in the next few months, we might have to bring these dreams into contact with reality and the plans and programs of our organization. But in any case, thank you very much for this first very exciting contribution. I'm going to hand now to Maureen Rees. I'm really sorry if I've not pronounced your first name correctly. Maureen is the chair of the Sustainability Working Group within ICOM. Maureen is an architect, an art historian. He has worked in the UK and in Norway. And over the last 20 years, he's been working in the museum sector. He's been working recently on the Varanger Museum on the northeastern Arctic coast of Norway, and Maureen is chair of the very important ICOM working group on sustainability. So, Maureen, over to you.
Merci. Est-ce que vous pouvez penser à mettre votre micro?
Thank you very much. Could you please open your microphone, please?
So this presentation is based on my recent preliminary report to ICOM's executive board, which presented the working group's collective work and initiatives directed towards realizing the resolution from Kyoto on sustainability and implementing Agenda 2030. As a framework, I utilize a Talanoa dialogue. The dialogue is based on the Pacific concept of Talanoa, storytelling that leads to a consensus building and decision making. It's based on 3 questions. Where are we? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? So where are we? Some of the most recent updates from the working group and recent initiatives undertaken by ICOM outside the group are notably a proposal to develop a sustainable ambassador program. We've also seen our president at the G20 meetings, and we are planning a number of initiatives over COP26. There are 3 lessons, or at least, that we can learn from the pandemic that can accelerate action and transition to a renewable and sustainable world. We have to adapt to reality. We must be at the forefront of events, and we must be transparent. When considering the Kyoto resolution and the implementation of Agenda 2030, the working group feel that relatively little has been achieved. What has been achieved is fragmented, often dependent on individual committees or individuals and their particular interests. We have observed that Agenda 2030, despite being the fulcrum of ICOM's approach, as defined in the Kyoto resolution, is still not widely understood, either as the sole global agreement that offers a systemic approach to the crises we face, including climate breakdown, or indeed for ICOM specifically offering us the opportunity of avoiding the rabbit holes attempting to define the concept of sustainability leads to. Agenda 2030 offers a way to action. Defining sustainability leads to procrastination. So, number 2, where do we want to go? I would especially draw your attention to a future where the whole organization is aware of, understands, is committed to, and gives priority to implementing the resolution from Kyoto. But the whole organization is aware of the close connection between climate breakdown, the biodiversity crises, and implementing Agenda 2030. Understanding the agenda's holistic focus on sustainability's three spheres: social, economic, and environmental, and culture's role in attaining it. And where the base for action for ICOM members is broadened to offer all members the opportunity to contribute to implementing resolution. So how do we get there? Question number 3 in the Talanoa dialogue. Prague and onwards to 2030. ICOM should give priority to a concerted, unified approach to implementing Agenda 2030 anchored in the executive board and activated through the secretariat. Otherwise, it risks the danger of being seen as irrelevant by its peers. The working group therefore recommends that it should be replaced at the end of its second mandate period in 2022, and the body that replaces it must be allotted a position and a role in the organization that reflects an understanding of the urgent challenges facing society, the global museum in general, and ICOM and its members in particular, and commits the resources, both human and economic, to facilitate a successful outcome in meeting these challenges. ICOM should locate all the discussions around the definition, the code of ethics, and the strategic plan in the context of implementing Agenda 2030. It should be a precondition for each of these processes. At Prague 2022, ICOM should clearly state that implementing Agenda 2030 is the priority of ICOM in the decade up to 2030. Thank you.
Merci Maureen de nous avoir présenté
Thank you so much, Maureen, to have very clearly given us an overview of what your working group on sustainability is doing currently. Later, we will discuss this in further details. I'll be sending you my questions, much like most of the auditors. I think that following the different crises that we were confronted with over the last summer, I guess the burning question is that I'd like to address you, is that going to have an impact, and is that going to force us to shift the way we work internally in ICOM? I'm sure that other members will also be raising other questions, because today we are really trying to have an interactive discussion, because we've invited the main leaders of the different working groups and committees to present the challenges to which ICOM will be faced in the future. So hopefully our members will have a lot of questions to you that they will put to you. Now I will be showing you a video by Laurent Bonilla and Bruno Boulon, who unfortunately cannot participate in our meeting today. So both have more or less been involved in the workings of the working group to define the notion of museum. I've also been part of that working group, by the way. So I think it's key really to define what museums are at our level. So what I'll do now is that I'll launch the video, and I would like to thank already Bruno and Laurent for their intervention.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for the invitation today, which has given us the opportunity to consider how the museum definition discussion relates to a broader process of museum transformation in this century, and ICOM's role in shaping it. Bruno and I chair the Standing Committee for the Museum Definition, ICOM Define, which consists of 24 museum professionals that have varying cultural backgrounds, expertise, and perspectives, but who have taken an active interest in helping mold this process.
We are here today to discuss about the role of ICOM Define in constructing a new definition of the museum. Our main task is to make a definition that can represent the diversity within ICOM, but at the same time respecting how ICOM representation works, which is a global organization that values the input of member committees from around the world and focused on varying aspects of the profession. Considering the desire to be as inclusive as possible in the process of constructing the new definition, we conceived of the methodology as a participatory process with several rounds of consultation. The multiple rounds of consultation have enabled those committees who have been very active about the museum definition to really focus on their members' notion of what a museum is. And at the same time, it has motivated smaller and less vocal committees to come forth with their contribution.
Throughout this process, we've been really aiming to dialogue with all the different committees within ICOM, aware of their specificities, but at the same time, our challenge is to find the commonalities that unite us as museum professionals, despite our varying contexts. This process of finding common ground is allowing us to gauge what museums and museum professionals around the globe feel is their role in today's world. Beyond finding the commonalities, we also hope that the proposed definition might contribute to the revalorization of heritage and knowledge, making museums more accessible for different communities within civil society and expanding their right to preserve what has value for them.
The methodology set forth by ICOM Define of enabling a dialogue is not in vain. We are witnessing the excitement of each committee in wanting to participate in this process, and that has been tremendously inspiring. The only way this exercise can succeed, as we have been perceiving it up until now, is through an approach that is based on solidarity between the different committees of ICOM, a true listening to what others have to say, and understanding that we have to come together with respect for one another's worldviews. This exchange has been fruitful and extremely valuable for motivating museum professionals internationally to critically think about the present and the future of museums, and we feel that the process in itself is much bigger than the definition. It reflects a real need to have these discussions and reconceive our priorities and values in the contemporary landscape.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to briefly share with you how ICOM is enabling its committees to collaborate on building a future and better museum definition. We hope that the result of this work can really help the museum sector and society as a whole to heal and to find a path forward in this time of crisis, which is also a time of great transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. So, as I was saying, Lauren and Bruno are not able to join us today, yet we've heard their message loud and clear. I believe that Nava from the ICOM Israel Committee is present. I believe she was also involved in the workings of this committee. We could perhaps put our questions to her to see if she has any more comments. So what I'd like to do for the time being is to move forward with all the presentations, to keep to the time that we've allocated to each speaker. I have some difficulties to follow the discussions and the interactions in the chat. So what I was saying is that I think we'll pursue with the different presentations from all our different speakers today, to then have a debate on the future of ICOM and how we can perhaps define this future. I will now give the floor to Sally Jakovic, who is the chair of the Permanent Committee of ETCOM. Sally, you're the chair of the ICOM Standing Committee on Ethics, as well as the adjunct professor of museum anthropology at Columbia University and the director of the educational exchange at the American Scandinavian Foundation. So I will give you now the floor for a few minutes. The floor is yours, Sally.
Thank you, Juliet, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm pleased to be able to be here with you today. As current chair of ICOM's Standing Committee on Ethics, it's probably no surprise that I feel that maintaining our professional standards during this turbulent time is one of our greatest challenges. When trust in institutions is at an all-time low, the public still has high expectations of museums. Visitors attribute standards of honesty and authenticity to the objects we hold in our collections and value the knowledge grounded in sound research demonstrated in our exhibitions. They trust us both as purveyors of accurate information and as stewards of collections that we hold on their behalf. And as we have recently seen, they seek us out in difficult times for a sense of solace and stability. Yet, we are facing not only the impact of the pandemic on our institution, but also serious challenges related to our independence. And we must all confront the frightening consequences that climate change presents to the world for our collective sustainability. We face calls for restitution and repatriation, as well as decolonization, and are challenged to meet our social responsibilities, not to mention to ensure that our policies and practices encourage equity and inclusion for all. The challenges seem at times to be limitless, and we must work together to meet them. In Kyoto, ETCOM recommended to the executive board of ICOM that it was time to to revise the code of ethics, and we are moving along that path. A revised code of ethics for museums can provide guidance to meet all of our challenges. In 1980, as ICOM was preparing to develop its first code of ethics, it reached out to its committees and asked them to discuss professional ethics for museum personnel and to report their conclusions. 90 nations participated in these discussions, which provided the groundwork for the development of the first code. Today, ETCOM is hoping for the same level of participation as we move forward to revise and enhance the current code. Our initial consultation yielded a list of issues that need to be addressed more fully. But the participation in that consultation was not as robust as we would have liked. As a result, we're planning a second consultation later this year and early into 2022. We realize that the definition of museums is inextricably tied to the values and ethical principles that define our professionalism. Thus, while we have started our work in revising the code and studying the current code, we will not complete it and circulate a draft to the membership until after the museum definition is resolved, so that the priorities and values expressed in the new definition will be reflected in the revised code. The first consultation directed us to a number of issues that need to be addressed. Among the most often mentioned were sustainability or sustainable development, not just environmental issues, but also social and financial issues. The independence of museums from political influence, allowing museums to maintain their integrity in interpretation and programming. Equity, accessibility, and inclusivity that implies, among other things, equal rights and equal access to heritage. Social responsibility and the social role of museums. And finally, the ethical implications of the digital dimension of museums and social media, the impact of the new technologies on our workplaces and audiences. And finally, we heard that we should be developing one comprehensive code of ethics that incorporates principles from the Code of Ethics for Natural History Museums. These are only a few of the top issues. In our second consultation, we invite all of the committees and regional alliances, as well as all of their membership, to discuss and comment upon and add to these. We want to get as broad a participation in this process as possible so that the revised Code of Ethics will provide guidance on the issues that the ICOM membership deems important and provide guidance for the future. This is our time to work together to ensure that ICOM's revised Code of Ethics for Museums expresses the values and ethical principles that underpin our professionalism so that we can maintain the trust that the public places in us and continue to be vital organizations for all. Thank you.
Merci, Sally.
Thank you so much, Sally, for your intervention. And I'm really grateful to all the different speakers for keeping time and to stay within the time allocated of 5 minutes. I realize that it's quite challenging. Sally, I'm extremely glad to hear you. I believe that the work you've been doing on the drafting of this code of conduct is key. I am sure, I have no doubt that all our members will be very keen to get involved and to make a contribution to the drafting of the new ethics code. So I would like now to give the floor to Gabriele Picker, who is the president of the International Committees Working Group. I saw Gabriele a minute ago, but she seems to have disappeared from the screen.
Here.
Oh, here she is. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite spot you there. So very briefly, you are the chair of the International Committees Working Group. You're also the former chair of the International Committee of Egyptology. You, the former board member of ICOM Germany. You are currently a member of the International Archaeological Mission in Egypt. And you're also the head of the Egyptian department at the Rhys Egelon Museum, Meinheim. So I'll give you now the floor as the spokesperson of the International Committees Working Group. It's extremely important that you explain to us what function you fulfills and to share with us the feedback of the different international committees. I always tend to say that the international committees are really at the heart of ICOM's work. International committees have the opportunity to meet up and to discuss questions that are particularly relevant to them. So this is the opportunity. These international committees and these meetings that they frequently hold are essential for them to exchange and to share good practices. So this is a good way to encourage our different members to get involved. So I would like to invite all our different members around the world to see the opportunity to get involved through these international committees. I believe there are currently 2,500 members, French members, in these international committees represented in the international committees. I'm extremely proud to see their involvement. So Gabriele, if you could now briefly explain the key axes of your work to us, that would be great.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here today and represent the international committees. being here also in my function as the chair of the working group on the international committees. So the international committees, as you just said, Julien, they are per definition and per nature the global working environment within ICOM, and they play a really important role also when it comes to the solidarity aspect. We have 32 committees, which span a huge range of thematic content. There are parts of them based on topics related to collection, while 14 international committees are overarching general topics. And they go back, some of them, to 1948 already. However, in 2019, there were 2 new international committees created for a very good reason, because ICOM needs always to develop. Emma also emphasized on the point we have to be creative. We cannot be a static institution. And this is also of relevance for the international committees. They have to kind of revisit their content and what they're discussing, and ICOM cannot leave important issues to outside. So we need also to think about how many committees do we have? Is it necessary maybe to increase the number? And in size and in construction, they're very different, and I don't want to go into details, but at current state, at least 50% of ICOM members are also registered in one international committees. So we talk really about a huge number of people. It's 25,000 of people who are members of international committees. And this shows us also the need and the wish of our members to work really on a broad international level. In terms of membership, of course, there was a drop back with the COVID pandemics, and a lot of people could not kind of continue their membership. And this was also difficult, or still is difficult, for the international committees, who even struggled harder to kind of communicate only online with their members, because we don't speak the same language in a real sense. We try to kind of, we have our theme and our topic, which is shared, but only via screen, it's even more difficult to kind of communicate people with people, because solidarity is easier if or to feel empathy, understanding is easier if you know the people in person and if you're in front of them. And to mobilize new members, which is a big concern for ICOM, and mobilize particular members outside of the European core, it's even more essential that there is a personal contact, there's a first exchange of ideas, and not only a name on a screen or just a face on a screen. So it's certainly difficult, has been even more difficult. And so we have to kind of find new ways how to communicate, and nevertheless also to kind of go back to really important events in the International Committee, which is the annual meeting. At a closer look, with terms of the annual meetings, it's still the fact that they into 33% take place in Europe and Northern America. And this is not what ICOM needs and what we want. So also the international committees have to kind of revisit their strategies in terms of where do they present themselves, to which countries do they reach out with their kind of events and the things they organize. Nevertheless, it's of course very difficult to do this. And one of the biggest problem is certainly the financial constraints of the international committees. And we just heard from Emma also that we need to kind of revisit how we spend the money of ICOM. And we heard that 200,000 euro are subsidies of the international committees. So approximately 7,000 euro annually go to an international committee, which is not so much money if you want to organize something in a far away country. And we need to kind of find new ways to kind of support also activities in other countries than in Europe and in Northern America. And of course, the national committees come in there, that there is a bigger need for cooperation between the international committees and the national committees. And we need to foster this dialogue to kind of improve the situation. And this brings us also to probably one of the biggest barriers for an international work, which should not be underestimated, and this is the language. Since we have also seen when being in Kyoto that in Asia, many people not even speak English. Then if you go to the Arabic world, they have their own language. If you go to Brazil, you need Portuguese. So this always is a very big issue, but the international committees normally have not the funding for simultaneous translation, which is very nicely here presented. And I think also with the 3 official ICOM languages, it's not sufficient for the international committees. So we need kind of to open up for more languages in the world. And we need to activate younger members, and this can only be done together with the national committees, because membership all membership is related to the work of the national committees. They are kind of the gatekeeper also, and sometimes they even cause problems for the international committees when they not provide their membership information in due time, which makes it very problematic in the course of the year for the international committees. So there are a lot of issues, and the collaboration, the better cooperation between national committees, international committees, affiliated organization is really a very important way to kind of push the global work forward. And just for closing up, I'd like also to say that also in terms of sustainability, one of the big issues, of course, for the future, or currently already, we want to reach out to the world. However, then we have a high carbon footprint. So we need to find good balances also in this regard. But the international committees, they have a huge potential for the global activities. They can also provide help and peacemaking activities when they worked with countries like the Iran, which is extremely difficult already for financial embargo reasons. But we have a lot of committees who have members from these kind of countries, which are very difficult to work with. And also in the fight of illicit traffic and the protection of cultural properties, the international committees are really of importance. So a key issue is certainly bringing down barrier of languages, thinking out of the box, like Emma also said. This is very important. Don't stay like you are, just try to think in new ways, and find a good balance between digital offers who reach easily a global world, but also offer something in person, and strive for better cooperation between international committees, national committees, regional alliances, and so on. And so with this, I thank you and want to close down. Thank you.
Trou au début.
Merci, c'est pas grave pour les acteurs. Merci d'avoir.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. You said some very important things, some very strong points that you made there. Yes, it's very important for everyone to hear these things. I am very aware of this issue of the language barrier that you brought up when you spoke. I hope we'll come back to this point. You said that international committees don't have enough money to fund simultaneous interpreting. This simultaneous interpreting service that we've provided for this meeting was a fruit of the fact that ICOM France and our partners decided to put the money up for English and Spanish interpreting. Obviously, it's not all the languages of ICOM, but it is the official languages. I'm very pleased to hear that you're very attentive to this issue, because we did make a choice in this regard, and it's something that we really have wanted to develop. The way that we might be able to help all of the committees, including those that are furthest away, sometimes those that feel far away because of the language issue, but also those that might have issues around internet connectivity as well. These are issues that I'm very aware of. I feel very strongly about that, and I'm very pleased that you were able to express that so strongly. I think there's an issue of equality and access for all to the work of ICOM. I would like now to hand over now, and Gabby, you kind of introduced in some way our final speaker, who we're really looking forward to hearing from. This is Mutoni Thangwa. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you've struggled slightly with connection issues. Mutoni Thangwa, you're a spokesperson for the national committees. We've just heard from the international committees, and now we're going to talk about our national committees. We talked about the fact that the dialogue between international and national committees needs to be improved. I am very aware of this issue that Gabriele raised, but I think Mutoni, you're also chair of a national committee, and in my role as that chair of the international committee, it's the national committees that draw in new ICOM members. So when you become a member of a national committee, you become part of this diverse range of people who are part of ICOM. Obviously, this is what feeds into the mission of ICOM, and in particular, the mission that we're trying to highlight, the mission of redistributing things within ICOM from the countries which have the most members towards those who have fewer, in favor of unity. So I'm going to hand over to Mutoni now. Mutoni, you are the spokesperson for the national committees. You are a researcher and consultant in heritage, and you're also a writer. You've worked for 24 years in national museums in Kenya. You've had many different roles. You've been chair of Kenya's National ICOM Committee for several years. Mutoni, we're delighted to hand over to you so that you can talk in your role as spokesperson for the national committees and what you've perceived of members' expectations of ICOM in that role. Thank you. Over to you, Mutoni.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, I was challenged, but here I am. It's always a happy ending, I guess. I don't know whether you'll allow me to share my screen or, okay. I am very happy to reiterate that many of the things that Gabby has shared were going to be part of my presentation, but I don't need to repeat them. So what I'll do is, oh, wow. Juliet, can you share my presentation? I'm having a bit of a challenge. Okay.
Oui, Mutoni, on est en train de le faire. Peut-être qu'il faudrait tout petit peu de patience. Voilà.
Okay, thank you. So we know who I am. The previous slides don't really make any difference. And then I said a lot of the things that people have said are true, and there are challenges faced by international committees. But what I will do is concentrate on the challenges that affect specifically national committees in Africa, because many of the challenges shared by the global national committees like language, IRIS, collaborations, those are well known by everybody, and my colleagues have previously talked about them. But first, I'd like to thank ICOM France and Juliet, the moderator, for giving us this opportunity to be able to share this thoughts or these ideas that we might have. And what I will do is that I will stick with Africa and use the National Museums of Kenya as a sample for my discussion this afternoon. Next, please. So that's the National Museums of Kenya, Nairobi National Museum. So long before the challenge of COVID affected the world, African museums were struggling with different types of pandemics as far as the heritage world is concerned. And that's notwithstanding things like languages. Even in Africa, we speak so many different languages, and our national languages are often those of whoever had colonized us and stuff like that. One of the pandemics we were struggling with is the destruction of heritage, and being put at least by politically motivated actions, which often enable priceless looting of objects, looting of priceless objects from Africa. That's the red list from Mali, from the conflict of 2012. Next. Next slide, please. So another thing we also struggle with is attracting young people to the museum, because in many countries in Africa, and I'm sorry, can you go back a little bit, because the slides are supposed to come one by one, not as a group, I'm sorry. Okay, so the youth are a big challenge, not just in Africa, in Kenya as well, because you find that our populations have between 60 and 70-something% in almost all African countries. Those are the youth. This is a group that doesn't come to the museum. So that's a challenge, because without the youth, without the young people, the future of the museums cannot be guaranteed. Next, please. Next slide. Another threat that we have, many of our heritage sites are very small, but they accommodate a lot of tourists. And we have so many programs geared towards external communication. So what we think is that when global tourism resumes, which we all hope it will resume at some point, we're going to continue with the threat of mass tourism in our sites. Next, please. Another challenge that museums face that we have a lot of programs directed towards external audiences and not necessarily in support of local communities or change of the narratives that we represent in museums. And we have seen during COVID that local communities, your own audiences are the ones that we have all turned to, because those external visitors were no longer available to us. So much as we hope that going forward, we are going to resume as much as possible normal services in the world, I think what we need to do in Africa is change strategies and have a balance between external programs and internal programs. Next, please. I think next we have a video. Please play the video. So we're going to watch a video of one of our external programs, like for about a minute. Thank you. Please click on the video to play.
Désolée, Moutoni, on a du mal à lire la vidéo.
I'm really sorry, Mutoni. We're struggling to click and play the video. We're not managing to do it. We can see the picture, but we can't click on it. I think it's because you've sent us a PDF file, so I'm not sure that the link to the video is embedded in it.
Oh, no.
Le fichier ne passe pas.
Mr. Ishaki says that you've probably got the video on your own PC. In any case, Juliet says that she hasn't got it on hers.
Oh, okay. Can they give me sharing again, please, for a minute? I see if it will work.
arrive, on va la faire. On va y arriver, on va y arriver.
Okay, I think we're going to be able to do it. We're just working on the video, and I think we're going to be able to do it.
Oh, okay.
It's just about to start up, I think.
All right.
Oh, we are struggling a bit. It's our software that's struggling with this. I'm really sorry. We didn't have the right link for it.
I'm also very sorry because of the power issues. I ended up not being very well prepared because I had to change locations.
C'est pas grave.
To power.
Oui, merci en tout cas Mutoni.
Well, Mutoni, thank you so much for having made such an effort to be with us. In fact, I think I'm going to be able to play it. So let's go. I think it's just starting.
On n'a pas reçu la vidéo quand nous l'a envoyée. Malheureusement, Mutoni, apparemment, ce qu'on
No,
a reçu.
apparently, Mutoni, even in the PowerPoint production, we haven't got the video, or the video isn't working at our end.
Okay.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry, Mutoni.
Okay, we can get the next slide there.
Don't worry, let's move on to the next.
It's not a deal breaker.
D'accord. Et si on y arrive tout à l'heure, on la passera.
If we can get it working at our end, we'll show it a bit later, if that's okay with you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we missed the video, but what?
Continuez, Mutoni. Dès qu'on aura accès à la vidéo, on s'interrompra pour la
Keep going, Mutoni. Once we've got the video working, we'll let you know.
Okay. Back to the next slide, please. So that video was showing a very well-developed external program. It's a light and sound show from our For Jesus Museum. And I know they have them in light and sound show at the pyramids in Egypt as well. So what we have put a lot of our resources on, and as somebody said, resources are very limited, not just to national committees, but to museums in Africa as well. We've put a lot of resources in external programs. So by the time COVID came, our resources were taken up in programs which didn't have consumers because they were geared towards tourists, and the price that we charged for them was a bit prohibitive for local communities. So we're working on creating a new balance on that. Of course, African museums are so challenged by restitution, reparation, repatriation, and the whole question of the numerous African collections held in Western countries, but also not just that, but also the narratives that are told about them. Next slide, please. But at the National Museums of Kenya, we are going forward. We are stepping into the future with hope and solidarity. For example, we are having an exhibition that opens tomorrow, an amazing exhibition called Invisible Inventories. It is a collaboration between National Museums of Kenya and several museums in Germany. But the most important one is, I can't pronounce the word, but it's on the exhibition, Walter Kulten Museum. So what they have done is avail to the National Museums African collection, Kenyan collections in their exhibitions and in their catalogs. And for the first time, their pictures are on exhibition in 3D in Kenya. And Kenyans have been given the opportunity to ask, to say what they are. And this program has been very well developed. It had a series of documentaries in which Kenyans were asked what the objects were. Now, the most interesting part is that even Kenyans don't know what those objects are because they've been away from their communities for hundreds of years. So the current generations don't know what they are. But when we start such exhibitions like Invisible Inventories, first of all, pictures and objects, surmount some of the barriers we're talking about, like language, like geographical location. So I think it's a very, very good opportunity and a good way to move forward for museums, not just in Africa, but also museums all over the world in collaborations and sharing of ideas and information. Next, please. What is also happening, which is a very positive thing, is that museums are dealing with much more aware audiences. I just pulled that notice out of the internet, and it's quite interesting because you can see the message that the public is sending out. There was a time that these difficult conversations were between us museum professionals, but with the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, there's a whole new awareness in the world about social justice. And I think that will help museums in their collaborations going forward, because we are dealing with audiences that no longer ask, what are we talking about? They're very much aware of the issues that are affecting museums and of the issues that museum professionals are discussing. So including these issues of objects, sharing. And I must point out, it's not just objects of African origin held in the West, but also African countries have objects they hold from other African countries or from where else in the world. So it's not a one-way traffic, it's two-way. So an informed audience can only form part of this conversation. And I think that's a very positive move going forward. Next, please. So there are also other solidarity projects sponsored by SAREC and organized by international and national committees, such as the one we are participating in right now. There's also another one of training of trainers, where they're training leaders in conservation and risk management, organized by 5 international committees. So all these things are very positive things to start conversations on how the museum world can surmount our traditional challenges and go forward in a united front. Also the discussion on the new definition of museums. There's really a lot of positive things going on in spite of the pandemic. Next, please. We are not left behind in other challenges like global issues like climate change. That's a very nice presentation from a Kenyan artist where he says to save water, shower together. Of course, there's jest in the art, but it just shows that the whole cultural sector and the art sector, we are not left behind in the global issues that everybody is worried about and trying to address. Next, please. I believe, yes, the next one is that Africa, like everybody, everywhere else in the world, is doing its best. African museums are doing their best to conduct business as reasonably as they can, and of course, following the COVID protocols set out by our national governments and the World Health Organization. And I will not go so much into this because I'm sure every museum in the world is facing this particular challenge, and we are all very much aware of them. And I think that's the end of my presentation. That was the last slide. So asanteni, merci beaucoup, thank you very much. And I sincerely apologize for that hiccup and the technicalities. And once again, I thank ICOM France and my fellow presenters for setting a very good mood for this meeting. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Moutoni. Pas de problème. Si par hasard on récupère la vidéo, on la mettra sur le site après. Merci pour cette intervention. Maintenant, la parole va être aux participants dans la salle et en particulier, je demanderai à nos co-organisateurs, Nava, Teti, je ne sais pas si la Finlande est là, et en particulier Cherki Damadé, je vais lui passer tout de suite la parole parce qu'il me l'a déjà demandé. Je trouve ça important que vous prépariez des questions, tous les participants, pour que nous essayions dans le peu de temps qui nous reste, il nous reste une vingtaine de minutes, d'arriver vraiment à dire ce que vous attendez d'ICOM, ce que nous attendons collectivement d'ICOM, quelles sont les orientations qui vous semblent les plus favorables en ce moment, celles sur lesquelles vous pensez qu'il faut qu'on persévère. On a tous nos idées sur cette question. Je voudrais passer tout de suite la parole à Cherki Damali, qui est donc président du CIMUSET et à ce titre co-organisateur de cette session et de tout ce cycle que nous avons monté tous ensemble. Et Cherki, je te passe la parole tout de suite avec pardon, il y a un problème de traduction.
So we're going to time of question and answers. Sorry, we didn't have the English translation for a moment. It's going to be a time of question and answers. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. It's going to be a time of question and answers about the expectations of ICOM members. Cherki, there's going to be a point that I'd like to hear you speak about, not as a president of CIMUSET, but as president of ICOM in the Arab world. In particular, you know our strong desire for reaching out to all of our operations, our discussions, our dialogues, and bring countries from ICOM Arab world into that. I don't know if you would confirm this, but access seems to be pretty tricky for those countries. How can we do better? Is it an issue of internet connection? Is it about the subjects that we're discussing? Are they not interested? Are our Arab colleagues not interested in the subjects that we want to discuss? How would you interpret this situation, and what would you suggest to enable us to connect better?
Okay, I will speak in French if the translation is good. Otherwise, I can speak in English. So, vous me confirmez que la traduction?
Is the translation working?
Confirm that there's no issue with
Can people on the English channel just
English?
give a thumbs up if it's okay?
Please, Cherki, do not change, do not switch channel.
So, first of all, for your question about the participation.
Cherki, tu peux parler en français. Tu peux parler en français.
Je peux? D'accord.
Cherki,
yes, so Cherki's going to speak in French
and speak
translation.
in French then. Fine, I will address your last question. So, to talk about museums in the Arab world, you are right. We can clearly see that our Arab colleagues are much less represented in these interventions. We have to strive for the Arab language be added as one of the official languages of the ICOM, and most of our Arab members, I'm afraid, are not able to communicate in other languages apart from Arab. So that's an issue we've raised with ICOM, and their answer was that if we wanted the Arab language to be offered or documents to be translated in Arabic, it would not be possible for ICOM to allocate any funding to support the translation and to designate Arabic as an official language. So I sincerely hope that in the future, going forward, we'll be able to find an agreement with ICOM in order to find a solution to this issue. Another issue that I would like to raise is that, unfortunately, not many youth are asking for membership of ICOM. What we've done is that we've discussed, we've invited the different members of our Arab committee to tick the option of joining an international committee so that there is a representation of the Arab world on the international scene. So that's to answer both of your questions. Now, I have a remark that I'd like to share with you following the proposal made by Emma Nardi. So you're right when you say that ICOM has the potential to become a reference in museology. We have potentially we are well positioned to, thanks to our network of experts, to become a reference. Now, the question I'd like to ask is how to proceed. You might be familiar with the project launched in China and the IMREC as well, which is a project that we launched in partnership with the Shanghai University. So through those two projects, I was wondering perhaps, and we haven't had much feedback following on the launch of these two projects from ICOM. I wonder if those two projects could be a template that we could emulate. So perhaps we could assess the outcome of those two projects before we move on to see how we can launch projects for the Arab world. And also, by the way, I'd like to ask why always the choice of putting China on the forefront as opposed to the Arab world. You raised the issue of connectivity. In Africa, only 10 countries represent 80% of internet connectivity in Africa. That means that about 850 million people in Africa are unfortunately not able to get connected. So I hope that the representatives of the international community, well, what I would like to say is that these people, or representatives of the international community, are not able to sit at the table and to contribute. So, as you know, we are currently launching a review project of ICOM. So I think this will be an issue, a key issue to solve.
Je vais évidemment laisser Emma Nardi répondre sur la question que tu lui as posée.
You didn't take too long. I saw that Emma Nardi appreciated your answer. A few have asked to have the floor. To summarize what you've just said, I would like to first address the question of digitization. I've given you the opportunity to express yourself on this topic. Why are Arab countries not represented in the bids that ICOM has previously launched? Well, the issue of connectivity is key here. Very often, those able to participate are the ones from the North Hemisphere, from the global North, and those from the global South, who are the most remote members, are unfortunately not able to contribute. You know the you're all familiar with the fact that the digitalization was instrumental to keep us connected during the pandemics, yet it also highlighted the disparity of around the world and the injustice. So we'll have to see, following on in the future debates held by ICOM, how we can prioritize this issue. Perhaps this could become an issue that we could pioneer going forward. How can we support those countries, those members who have difficulties getting access to our activities online? There's clearly a digital divide here. We've not clearly confronted this issue yet. This remains our Achilles heel. So regardless of all the efforts we're striving to make to ensure equity between the different members of the ICOM network, we need to assess whether we are doing enough in this respect. You've raised another question, which is a redundant question. We've talked about this many times. It's the language barrier. So I remember very well that it was asked that Arabic be one of the official languages of ICOM. Obviously, we are in favor of this proposal, but besides this, I think we should pay more attention to multilingualism and the representativity of different cultures. We could envisage 4 or 5 official languages going forward, but this will never be sufficient. It's obviously very difficult to have to converse in a different language from your native language. So I believe that we should do more in terms of multiculturalism and multilingualism. We should support this initiative. Obviously, this comes with strings attached. This comes at a cost. Today, we are benefiting from financial support in order to be able to enlist help of interpreters, but this remains a key question for ICOM to ensure that we reach out and we are able to reach out to all our members, all our constituents, and we're able to support the museum professionals in their work. We have to obviously start trying to consider the question of sustainable development, see what is unifying us. Among other things, I'm thinking of the question of ethics. Having said that, I agree with what Emma said. We have to innovate, and I think that should be our priority going forward. So I will not ramble. I will now give the floor to some of our partners, Nava, Muteti, but before that, the interpreter, sorry, Juliette's microphone is now on mute. She's not able to. Thank you very much, Juliette, and thank you for those excellent presentations.
The compulsory, the choice of a committee, and kind of came to the conclusion that what would be ideal would be to have a compulsory box where people can say, I don't want to choose a committee, or I will choose this committee. That is to say, it brings attention to the fact that we exist and that you have a choice, but it doesn't necessarily make you be part of a committee that you have no interest in, because otherwise it's just, inexistent participation. So just that's all. Thank you.
Excusez-moi, mon micro était coupé. Merci, merci beaucoup.
I'm really sorry, my microphone was on mute. Motoni, I'll give you the floor now, if you will, and then we'll listen to Emma.
Oh, thank you very much, Juliet. The first thing I was going to say was the issue of languages, but which you said, but national committees made a recommendation that we add Arabic as one of the languages of ICOM, because we have about 14 national committees that speak Arabic, no, 12 national committees that speak Arabic only. And when you add the African countries that also speak Arabic, they are 14 to 16. So that's a point. But the other thing I wanted to make a comment on what you asked about connectivity is that I agree with Damali. Kenya is one of the countries that has very good connectivity, but we have a problem with power distribution. So you find that when it's not an internet issue, it's a power issue. So if you don't have electricity, you're not going to have internet. So statistically, they will say that Kenya is very well connected, but if the distribution of power is not equitable, or you have regular power rationing, then it makes no sense to have internet because it's dependent on electricity. So those are some of the challenges. So for the 80% connected African countries, we will continue to have challenges with the digital programs that are real time, but anything else that can be uploaded to a website or what, we can do that because it doesn't have to be within the framework of time. The last thing I wanted to say is that this language issue is very powerful and we can't downplay it, because recently, thanks to SAREC, we translated the Code of Ethics into Swahili. It's like completely amazing. Especially the technical people, they read it in their own language. And for the first time, you find a collections manager asking, oh, is that what they mean? So he's had the book for years, he's read it many times, but I guess there was a disconnect between English and the language he could understand. So when they read it in Swahili, they're like, oh, this is what they mean. Oh, we can implement this. So the power of language cannot be underestimated. Thank you.
Merci et merci beaucoup de cette précision. Je suis toujours.
Thank you very much, Mutoni, for this. I'm still keen to hear from Teti and from Navarre before I hand over to Emma, if that's possible. It looks like Gabby wants to speak as well, but Teti, would you like to just say something right now? Teti needs to unmute. Yes, thank you very much. We're coming right to the end of our cycle of debates, our solidarity cycle, but I think everything has gone really well. What are we expecting from ICOM? I would like to speak on behalf of our national committee. I represent the national committee in Greece, and I'd like to say on behalf of our members that all of the tools that have been given to us during this difficult period need to be developed. As committees, we need to follow up on this idea of solidarity, this movement of solidarity that we have developed. And I believe that the national committees need to be supported by ICOM because they are coordinators. They play a role as coordinators within our countries. And I think because of this, the national committees should be supported. I've really enjoyed listening to what Emma said about the distance school. I think that could be a very interesting initiative, and that national committees could this initiative could play a very interesting and central role in training. I want to take the opportunity to thank all of our speakers today. It's been very interesting. And I just wanted to perhaps respond to something that Gabby said. Here in Greece, as a national committee, when we organise a meeting of an international committee, we always try to ensure that there is simultaneous interpreting. It really helps our members, and it helps to attract and draw in our members to the meeting. We're at the end of this cycle. I do want to thank all of the speakers, and I think we can all share Emma's dream. I want to thank all of our colleagues who have been a part of this project, and I want to thank you in particular, Juliette. Thank you and your team, and Claude, Maurice, and all of your colleagues. And we do hope that we'll be able to work together further in the future. That's what I really wanted to say. Thank you very much, Titi. This collaboration isn't finished. This is the last session, but we do have other projects. Emma, I think you asked to speak. I think a lot of questions were asked to you in the chat. And you could perhaps tell us a little bit more about some of the actions that are supported by the SAREC committee. So I'm going to hand over to you, Emma, and then I'll ask Gabby to speak after that. I think that the international committees are like excellent musicians who need a conductor. They make great efforts. I was the president of one of the committees, and I know all of the efforts that entails. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, we can hear you well, Emma. Keep going. I think that this effort needs to be brought together under a common denominator. That's why I'm talking about this idea of a distance school. I thank all of those who wanted to ask me a bit more about that. We have content for an incredible distance learning school. So we need to bring it together in order to promote the work of the international committees and to give the international committees the opportunity to disseminate what they do in different countries. There is an issue around connectivity. We can't give internet connection to countries that are struggling with that. That's not within our power. But what we can do is create some very simple content, probably text-based content, because some other types of content, like video content, can be tricky when there's a difficult connection. I think that if we come together, we have the means and resources to organize this type of activity. I've been talking about it for quite some time, but I think COVID has shown how vital and indispensable it would be. I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm here. I can talk further about the ideas if anyone wanted me to. Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you for talking a little bit more about this. I think it's important to highlight that not everything is possible. It's not our role to provide internet connections in different countries to ensure that the museums have the power supply or the internet connections that they need. But we do perhaps need to invent new ways that will enable dialogue and communication to take place in different ways, in multiple ways. This the new approach is sometimes referred to as a hybrid approach, and I think we need to push it further. Gabriele, can I hand over to you now?
Thank you very much. It's really a very interesting and stimulating discussion. And I just wanted to add something with the translation, because as much as I emphasized on the language barrier, I cannot see that adding one more language to the official languages will help the cause. I think we need a more kind of event-specific concept, that in each kind of, that you really consider who is the audience, who are the participants. And having been a chair of CPAC, we used to have Arabic translation when we were in Egypt. So this makes sense to kind of really think, who is the person I'm speaking to? And if you are in Brazil, it doesn't help with Spanish. You need Portuguese. So this is something we have to, I think we need more flexibility. And I very much like what Emma also said regarding the concept of the triangle conferences, because they are our biggest kind of opportunity to learn about each other and to meet each other. In the current concept, actually, the international committees are trapped in their program, and they literally have no time to kind of visit other committees and their programs. So even so, we stimulate and we kind of ask them to join together. Nevertheless, they meet with one or two other committees. Mutoni also presented a nice project where several international committees are involved. But I very much like what Emma said, that we have to think about finding new formats where the ICOM membership can kind of really meet, they can exchange in a more open and broad way, because we first of all, we need to learn who we are, who are all these committees, national committees, international committees, whatever. We don't know each other well enough. And this is what a big part of the problem. But thank you a lot, and I'd really like to thank the organizers for this very nice event.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid time is getting away from us, and we're getting to the end of our session together this afternoon. I would really like to invite those who are here and who might want to speak in a few minutes that are remaining to let us know. Raise your hand on Zoom, or let us know in a chat so we can hear from anyone else who is wanting to speak. I'm not seeing any hands raised right now. I saw a number of very interesting comments in the chat. I saw that Marcus was saying translation is difficult, and I do agree. Translation is difficult, so we need to get hold of this tricky, difficult issue. I don't know quite how we do it. Elodie has said in the chat that translation is one of the most important tasks of ICOM. I think that has been said. Emma said that. Lots of us have said that. I think it's an important thing for our organization in the future to make things accessible to as many people as possible. Are there any people wanting to say things? Don't regret having not spoken up and said something you really wanted to. I think now is the time. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Yes, there is a hand actually. It's Maureen, what did you want to say? Sorry.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the people who have contributed today, and all the speakers, and all the questions, and all the comments. I'd just like to close by saying I hope that ICOM doesn't end up to be like the the quartet that was playing on the Titanic as it hits the iceberg and disappears into the ocean. All these things that have been discussed here today are extremely important, very, very relevant, but it's surprising, I think, to find that the most urgent issues facing society, and we are a part of it, have not been addressed here. apart from the 5 minutes I was involved in here. But this is not something unusual. This is something that reflects the challenges that society has in attempting to attain these goals of the Agenda 2030, which we will all have to focus on in the next decade. Thank you.
Merci, Maureen. C'est important de conclure.
Thank you, Maureen. I think you're right. That's a good place to conclude. We've discussed a lot of things, but we didn't come back to this issue of sustainability. It's very much present in our minds, but we probably don't know, as well as all of that, what we need to do in this light. Thank you very much for your role, in any case, in chairing this working group, Maureen. And I wanted to say that ICOM France is putting together a specific working group on sustainability as well. And so I do hope that our French group will make a useful contribution to ICOM's international work on sustainability. I'm afraid that we're going to have to wrap up now. And Claude, what were you saying? There's one more person asking to speak. It's Ophelia Lyon. I'm going to obviously welcome her, and then I'm afraid we're going to have to say goodbye. I might just come back to give you a little bit of information, but over to you, Ophelia.
Just like the last intervention in terms of the most crucial issues that we're dealing with today as a society in general, but more concise culturally, is the destruction of cultural sites due to wars that are millennic and that we're losing. But there's some issues that we can deal with within ICOM, and other issues that have a further even dimension for everyone, and that we're all conscious of, and that Mutoni brought up, and that we didn't further on, but that we should. That's all. Thank you very much again, time and again. Everyone was fabulous. Thank you, Juliette, and your team, and everyone else.
Merci à tous. Merci.
Thank you very much, Ophelia. Thank you again to all of our speakers. Thank you to Anne-Claude, Maurice, and Audrey from ICOM France for managing these technical aspects. We've had one or two difficulties with internet connections, but not too much, actually. Ophelia, you're right. We can't discuss all of society's subjects in an hour and a half. Our President Alberto Campanini said this summer, when he was present at the G20 in Rome, he said that museums are some of the most credible places. He was talking about the credibility of museums with respect to aspects relating to sustainability, because this meeting of heads of government and ministers of culture, obviously museums are places that our governments should work with and draw on, places that are safe and credible. That gives us a responsibility, a very significant responsibility, and the things that we're trying to do, we've talked about them today, in order to make ICOM strong and united and coherent organization, aim to help museums play their role, a role that is strongly expected of them in society. And I think together today we've become aware of it. If we're together today, it's because we want to play a role, each one of us. And in particular, as Maureen reminded us, there is an issue around sustainability, which does cover all of the aspects of the future of our societies, not just climate-related issues. So thank you very much to everyone. Our next debate within ICOM France will be around the definition of a museum on the 15th of October at 3 o'clock French time. We are holding a debate at Bruno and Lohan's request, especially in the French-speaking world. So when we're talking about definition, we need to ensure that the question is heard and discussed in all of our languages to ensure that the definition is interpreted in as close as way as possible when we use words. So 15th of October at 3 p.m. for our French members, and we're soon going to try and put together a new Zoom program with our partners. I hope that we'll be able to announce that before the end of the year. So thank you and goodbye. And I say see you soon to many of you, hopefully in person, if possible. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.